Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Like Amy said, this is the session where we wanted to sit around and talk about all the new crazy stuff that we've got going on in this industry, which is always so much new crazy stuff going on in this industry. So first of all, let's kick it off here, and we'll kind of I'll throw some questions out and then pick it up and introduce yourself, talk about how you want to do, and then answer the question here. So we'll get started here. So first things first here that we want to talk about is and Frank, I'll send this over to you. What have you been seeing over the last year that's new? Like what's new? Let's just start out with the basics thing. What's new this year?
Yeah, sure. So I think for us, as an intro, so I work at Offchain Labs. I'm the head of finance there. We developed a protocol called Arbitrum, which is the number one L2 on Ethereum. I think sitting in my shoes today, some of the things that are new for me specifically is really about finding the right tools to have accurate reporting, thinking about compliance. So I only joined about a year ago, and so I've been working on the entire process of migrating all of our accounting from our third party in-house. And so for me right now, it's a lot of spending time thinking about building process, how do we think about on a go forward basis, what do we want to do? And so really leaning on tools to help facilitate with those things, and I think there's a lot of new tools popping up, and I think that's, for me at least, is like a lot of the new stuff that I'm seeing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's obviously been one of the trends this year that we will continue, and this one is controls, and like part of that is that so many companies are actually bringing it in-house. Everyone's growing up. Everyone in blockchain is kind of growing up a little bit. So yeah, Sarah, what about you? What are the new trends you're seeing this year? What's going on?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am from KPMG. I've been at KPMG my whole career. I started out in our audit practice on our banking and capital markets clients, and then a few years ago transitioned into our audit technology organization. So I get to build technology in-house to help us serve our audit clients. And so for me, I guess what's new, we've just been tracking mainly a lot of the new accounting things that have been coming out. Like we talked a lot about ASU 2023-08, updates to the AI CPA Digital Asset Practice Aid this year. There were a few new chapters added on existence, ownership, and valuation from the auditing side. So that was exciting. And then also there's proposed AI CPA guidance for stablecoin issuers. So I think just tracking that there's been a lot of positive movement in terms of guidance, and excited to see that continue.
Yeah, it's funny. I forgot about the impact to the auditor side from the AICPA guidance. Obviously, is a huge deal every year. So great. Well, Mark, and you can introduce yourself and then tell us what's new that you're seeing out there.
Sure. So my name is Mark Lee. I'm an audit partner at Aprio. I co-lead with my tax partner over here on the blockchain digital asset. So in terms of just three new items that I've been released that's different from a year ago, which is really AI tools or advanced technology tools that are being used in audit. So how do we conduct audit in an efficient, better way, and even increasing quality is one area of what I've seen have changed. The other thing is really compliance issues on a finance and accounting team. As you work with these clients, there's a lot of new rules out there, as you probably know, right? Some accounting, some SEC rules. If you have international operations, you guys all know about the MiCA, M-I-C-A, and you've probably heard of some of the latest 1099 DA rules that came out. So you can see there's a lot of rules that you have to follow. And so I think the challenges around compliance and working with your clients is things that we struggle almost every day. The third thing would be just more the concept of big data. This is a word that I've remembered many years ago. I think it seems to come back now that it's just a whole area around, if you're in digital assets, the large volume of data and transactions you have to maintain. It's the quality of the data that's really important. So we see these, that's also another challenge that we've witnessed lately. So.
Yeah. So we're obviously going to get to talking about RWAs and ETFs and all this other kind of stuff, but Mark, you mentioned big data. Frank, you guys are bringing accounting in-house right now. How are you kind of dealing with this issue of data? Like, have you actually optimized for hiring folks? I know we had Betsy on stage who literally said that she hires data scientists. I mean, is that something that you've actually looked at?
Yeah, so I think right now, for us, there's like two areas that we're focused on. I think one is like making sure that we're exploring the market from a tools perspective. I think we lean heavily on trying to find the right partners to support us in that way. The second is using our own internal engineering resources. I think for us internally, that's probably the most difficult place for us to like get attention because like, you know, our engineering team, they think their time is like way more valuable, and it is way more valuable. They're like actually out building Arbitrum technology, and it's this constant battle to try to like get them to, you know, give us attention. And I think, you know, the unique part of our protocol is that, you know, no external service can like actually track everything that our protocol does perfectly, just because, you know, there's all these nuances when it comes to the Arbitrum chain and the technology from a tracking perspective. And so a lot of times I have to actually lean on our engineering team because like they have, you know, sometimes for us at least, you know, we migrated from what was called Arbitrum Classic to Arbitrum 1, which is the new protocol today. And pretty much all the old information that I'm trying to reconcile, you know, you can't find on Etherscan, you can't find on chain anywhere. And so it's like things like that where I have to really lean on a lot of my engineering workforce to help.
This is always a fun one. So because we've gone through this with a few different chains at this point, where we have to keep the pre-Genesis data sets, then have its post-Genesis. Like Optimism, obviously, with the Regenesis, same kind of thing, and that's always been that produces really hard challenges for folks in all three of your position because you're not dealing with it. Sarah, that's actually a great kind of segue of you because you do audit source specific tools. How have you dealt with the explosion of new L1s, L2s, blockchains over the last 6-12 months here?
Yeah, it definitely has been interesting to keep up with. We've seen a lot of our clients transacting on Solana as well, so that's a big one too.
Yeah, and Solana's a tough one to audit no matter what because the way their transactions actually look on chain, it's hard to sort of tease apart exactly what's happening in some cases.
Yeah, so definitely a big challenge and requires a lot of investment and a lot of time, and that's what our team's doing. So, but yeah, we have to, you know, pull that data, get it independently, and validate that for our clients, books and records. So
well, we try to use Bitwave as well to help.
The man right there.
That's what he wanted me to throw in that name. But in honest, I mean, it is a challenging area, right, in terms of data. I mean, this data has always been an issue for me. I don't know, as far back as digital asset exists, right? And it gets even worse every year because you got so many different types of products that are out there, and there's so many different deviations of those products. So it just gets. In some ways, it's great for the industry because you're developing new products, but in some ways, it's not so great for us as auditors or accountants because you know, it comes down to this concept of transparency. And I'll give you an example, like Lightning. A lot of you know, right? Lightning is a way to, you know, reduce gas fees for Bitcoin transactions. It's great from an industry standpoint because, you know, companies can do this at a reduced and all things work well, but when it comes to audit or trying to do tax work or whatnot, you know, you gotta verify the validity of those transactions, and there's no way you can do that
there's no public blockchain around
Lightning. Comes back out.
Yeah.
So, we struggle with that. We have a great client that wanted us to do work, but just couldn't do it.
Yeah, even for us, as we built our Lightning integration, you basically have to build a crawler for someone's personal node that they're running, which is a totally different pattern than any other blockchain that you actually have out there. So, okay, Mark, you brought up a great point here, which is that this industry is constantly evolving. So I'll open this question up for whoever wants to take a stab at it, which is, how do you think about future-proofing your organization, your job, your team, your organization against the absolute craziness that is happening in crypto and the changes that happen every single day?
Yeah, I think maybe from our clients, like thinking of how they can future-proof their organizations, I think we've talked a lot about controls and making sure you have a robust control framework and making sure that whether you're interacting with the service organization, that they have proper controls as well. And yeah, just thinking through if you're interacting with a specific protocol, you know, how are you getting that data? Can you rely on that new blockchain or protocol? Thinking through like any new risks and if they're appropriately decentralized. And I think just in general, involving your auditors from the beginning as you're kind of setting up these control frameworks and figuring out how you're going to get the data will be successful for both sides.
I love it. The audit answer to how do you future-proof is more controls. That's good.
Yeah.
If that's not an audit answer, I don't know whatever has ever been an audit answer in the history of mankind.
Well, I was going to add to what she says. I think being ready, I would categorize into kind of 3 buckets area. One is just a behavioral. So, point having a good view of be proactive rather than reactive, because you have lots of companies out there that have great business model, does really well. They come to you, but the data sucks, and then they're trying to scramble and try to rebuild accounting for the last year and a half. So I think behavioral is one issue. I would say, if you're a CFO, or if you're working with, if you're industry accountants and non-CPA, if you're not in the CPA profession, I would recommend just getting your company and your CFOs and senior leaderships to kind of change their behavior and really think about being proactive rather than reactive. The other item I would say is kind of transparency that I talked about earlier. Really, not just the fact that we have data, but really are those data verifiable, or can it be validated by an independent CPA firm, in a sense of, can you be audited, and eventually you're going to need for your tax returns and all that stuff. And then the third thing I would just say is more processes and IT and technology. I would say that to any companies I work with is think about the processes that you're going to put in place, not only just the behavior view, but what do you have in place? And so, a software like Bitwave would be a good example of thinking about what do you want to implement early so that you're being proactive rather than reactive. So I think those 3 things kind of capture what I would recommend to any clients that I work with.
Frank, anything to add on future-proofing?
Yeah, I think the one thing that, from an operator perspective is really working with the engineering team that's developing, if you have your own protocol, and understanding the technology behind it. Because a lot of times it's the nuance in the technology of how the actual transactions flow that actually will impact the accounting standards for everything. And so I think now being in crypto full time, you start to realize, hey, I can't just sit back and just rely on my existing knowledge, but I actually have to speak to the engineers and really understand everything that's being built. So you really have to kind of flex and become a little bit more technical.
It's one of those things, because we work with a bunch of different protocols. We work with the Near folks, and Near it's a great blockchain, but it's incredibly complicated. They have 47 different transaction primitives in the blockchain. And it's one of those things that I kind of wish that we could have asked their engineers to just make it a little bit simpler, because it creates so many downstream impacts on this that it's the more that the blockchain goes mainstream, the more the engineers will actually have to think about consumability and financial statements and all that kind of stuff from day one of the blockchain design. So, all right, well, let's move on to some of the more fun stuff here, the new things that we're seeing out there. So the 3 that we kind of chose to talk about that have come up today already a few times are the first one is ETFs. So I'll throw this out there. Is there anything interesting to talk about around ETFs, either from an audit side or a day-to-day accounting side? And it's okay if you say no. That's a valuable bit of information for everybody.
No, I think ETF is good. I mean, I think it's great for the industry, right? I mean, because you want the industry to continue to evolve. The reason a lot of us are here is that we are supportive of the industry. The reason I've been involved since 2013 because I believe in the industry and I want to continue to support it. So I think it's good overall for the industry from a product standpoint. But what I question is it's a much higher fee. So it's like a 401k in essence, or a mutual fund. So would you rather have someone manage it, or would you manage it yourself? So really, if you can get over the hurdle of the fees, then I think it's just as good as anything else.
Any challenges from the audit side around the ETF? So I don't know if you guys do any audits of ETFs, but is it pretty simple, or is it a whole different discipline of auditing now publicly traded funds that are holding digital assets?
No, I think actually in this specific case, it is relatively simple. We were talking about that recently. Yeah. Pretty straightforward to how we've audited ETFs in the past, and now just kind of taking into consideration anything around the custodians and things like that. But overall, from an audit perspective, not a huge change.
All right.
I agree.
Good to know. All right, easy peasy. Frank, let's talk a little bit about let's talk about RWAs. Let's circle around from ETFs to RWAs. I know that Offchain doesn't do a ton with RWAs, but I know if you take RWAs as a broader pattern towards tokenization, RWAs, representing any sort of asset on chain. Anything that you're seeing there, anything cool that you're seeing there, how are you thinking about accounting for it if you are seeing anything there?
Yeah, sure. So I think RWAs will impact a lot of how DAO treasuries will actually work. So, our treasury is mostly in dollars at Offchain. We're like, I consider our company more like a Web 2 company building blockchain technology. However, the Arbitrum protocol that we built and spun onto a DAO, they have a massive treasury that they own. And I think the unlock with RWAs is that it allows them to diversify their treasury. So today, I think typically you'll see DAO treasuries hold their native token, and then maybe ETH or Bitcoin, and then USDC, right?
And maybe a little bit of DeFi activity,
Right.
but obviously you have protocol risk there if you're putting $1 million into
Exactly.
XYZ. Yeah.
And so a lot of times now, I think was probably from a DAO perspective, they a lot of these foundations, they budget in their native token because that's the predominant their treasury, but at the same time, all their expenses now are in dollars, and so that's become much more prevalent in terms of how they think about budgeting. And so in the current paradigm, they have to hold a USDC, but they don't get yield on USDC, right? So if they can now, instead of buying USDC, buy a tokenized money market fund.
Yeah, Biddle or one of the ones that's out there, yeah.
And they can get that yield. And so what we're seeing at least on the Arbitrum side is a lot of these institutions, so like BlackRock, Biddle, they requested a STIP from the foundation.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah.
To actually build to deploy it on?
Yeah, so like they're gonna, they're trying to deploy on Arbitrum, and so there's just like a lot of liquidity on Arbitrum,
Yeah.
and so we're seeing a lot more RWA activity launching on Arbitrum.
So I did a talk this morning that it was literally exactly this. It was like what RWA means and what it actually means now. What it meant a year ago, what it means today is, today it just means tokenization. Like if we talk about Biddle as RWAs, like it's T-bills, but that's what we're seeing now. So I'm actually going to riff really quickly on what Frank said and ask the two of you a question, which is, are you seeing more DAO activity, less DAO activity, the same amount of DAO activity? What are you hearing from DAOs these days? Is that still a thing?
I don't see a lot, at least on my side. I know my tax partner sees more DAO, and it's more from a tax structuring standpoint. If you have a DAO, what jurisdiction you want to put the entity versus the subsidiary, wherever you want. It's all that tax structuring, which I don't really deal with that much on the audit or accounting side. So I wouldn't be able to speak too much on the DAO side. I don't think I see too much of it.
I mean, have DAOs ever, for either of you, have DAOs ever gotten audited by a Big Four or by Aprio or anything like that? Like, that's a silly question, but it's not a silly question.
No, that's a good question. I have not audited a DAO for lots of reasons. I think one, it's just been most DAOs are set up outside of U.S.
Who's going to sign
Yeah,
the other side
and
of
it
the
really
deal
doesn't
and
have a
stuff?
reason to do any audits or no requirements. If they do have requirements, they'll find a way to not have audited. So that's why I don't really see a lot of from an accounting audit. But from a tax perspective, there could be some implication of how the transactions are being transmitted between the U.S. and the DAO. But yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, finally, what I'm going to do is the last thing we want to talk about is restaking. So staking and restaking, we can all kind of treat together. Sarah, you're obviously one of the more technical people on here. Talk about how you guys are thinking about staking, restaking as from an audit perspective, because it actually can be genuinely hard, especially depending on the amount of activity to handle this. I know from the Bitwave side.
Yep. Yeah, we've definitely seen an increase this year, especially it's really only been a year since Ethereum launched the Shanghai upgrade where you could get the staking withdrawals. And so I think since that, institutions have felt more comfortable in staking their assets and having that as a relatively low risk form of yield. So definitely seen a big increase there. From the data perspective, it adds another layer of now having to get data from the consensus layer. So adds some complexities, but overall, yeah, definitely seen that trending. I know restaking's been a hot topic at conferences and things. I haven't seen anything personally.
Any actual requests around it?
Yeah, but definitely interesting to keep up with.
Yeah, well, I know, and speaking back to Walter's talk, which I loved, was it's, you know, he talked about it from an L1, L2 perspective, but honestly, even as folks were going into ETH staking well before you could withdraw, that had really interesting implications for deferred revenue and other things. So like this idea of COGS and then the application deferred revenue and how you're doing revenue recognition, it really does echo across all of the crypto industry here. So anything that you guys are seeing on the staking side, it's interesting. How you're deploying your treasury, anything fun like that?
Yeah, I think for us, I'm honestly trying to stay away from that as much as possible. But, you know, unfortunately, so we own Prismatic Lab, which is one of the main Ethereum clients out there. And so we're one of the Lido operators. And so that is like the most relevant thing for us when it comes to staking. So, you know, we help people get yield on Lido. And we get stETH in return.
Yeah.
So for us, like the more difficult part of the accounting there is stETH doesn't actually report everything on chain when it comes to Etherscan. There's like this rebasing component of the token. And so that's become a very manual exercise for us around like figuring out, okay, on a daily basis, you know, manually reconciling the rebasing itself. We haven't found any tools that can really help us with that. So that's been a unique challenge that we've faced, you know, on this. And so I imagine this whole, you know, class of new restaking is going to be even more difficult. So definitely not trying to deploy anything until I fully understand everything yet.
Well, we should talk. But it's actually really interesting. Are you guys doing, as part of that, do you do any other interesting accounting treatments? Because there's the day-to-day revenue recognition from the staking rewards as they're compounding. That can be tricky. But are you doing anything around like liability tracking or like more SAB 121? I mean, this is all stuff that's kind of up in the air about whether it applies if you're running something like a liquid staking protocol, because you honestly are potentially custodying ETH. Now, that's obviously a very broad topic, and I'm being very, very generous there. But have you guys run into any other like weird decisions there around your treatments?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the process of like still building out the entire process just because it's one of the very many steps in terms of bringing all the accounting in-house. So nothing yet.
That's a tough one. That'll be fun to watch. We'll bring you back next year to talk about that because I think there's some interesting implications there. Sarah, let's kind of wrap this up. We got a couple minutes left here. Bring us home. How do you stay up to date on this absolutely insane world that we all live in here? So
Definitely a challenge. I would say KPMG's subscribed to a bunch of different research reports, so kind of reading through those, reading through white papers of anything new that our clients are getting involved in. We have recurring calls globally and cross-functionally to just stay up to date with what we're seeing trending from our clients. And yeah, I think from a technical perspective, we talked about, you know, increasing auditor technicality. So I took a Python course, and it was Python and Solidity a couple years ago. So I feel like just kind of learning basics has helped a lot in understanding the more technical pieces of it.
I love it. Mark, how are your SQL skills these days, buddy?
How do I stay involved or stay current? My first and priority would be just be part of the community. Always get involved in wherever you're located, local communities or just national conferences, including EDAS here. I mean, and second thing is just continue to talk to experts, industry experts, knowledgeable people. I think everyone you meet here has some form to share with you, whether they're an auditor or just an industry person or who, you know, whatever their title is. There's always something to learn from everyone here. So that's what I do. I just meet people. Some of you that know me, I'm pretty friendly, and I'll just, you know, chat with you and learn as much as I can and beat up on certain things, as you know, she mentioned too. Just subscribe to newsletters, and regardless if it's subscribing to a competitors, I don't care. If I'm subscribing to Eisner, you know, those Eisners, or PwC, I don't really care who the competitors are. You're learning, right? It's all about learning, it's being part of it. So.
Frank, bring us home, buddy. How do you, as a practitioner, how do you stay up to date on everything?
Yeah, I think community is definitely one. I mean, Twitter is another. But also just like, you know, being part of like CFO type communities where I'm able to like jam with other people who are facing the same challenges, bounce ideas off of each other. So that's been one of the bigger areas for me in terms of like, having that type of community.
Yeah, perfect. Well, you guys, thank you so much. That puts the top of the time here. Thank you very much for coming on board here. You guys all have amazing jobs. You have amazing insights. Thank you very, very, very much.